Gains! He wants you too, Malachi. He wants you too.
Greetings, boils and ghouls. This is your comrade, the Crypt Keeper here, reporting dead from the sanctuary of the strange. Tonight's macabre myth is a fright-filled feature, one overflowing with monsters, madness, and magic.
Welcome to the Monsters, Madness, and Magic podcast. I'm your host, Justin, joined by my co-host, Angelique. Say hello, Angelique.
Hello, I'm here.
And today we're joined by a very special guest, actor, director, producer, musician, Mr. Courtney Gains. Courtney, how the hell you doing?
Good, man. Sounds like I do a lot of stuff, man. That made me sound real good.
Yeah, you're a busy man. Let's get started at the beginning. Take us back in time, Courtney. When you were a kid, what sort of films, music, books, comics were you into that got your juices?
Oh, good question. So not really into comic books much. So we'll just get that one right out of the way. Movies wise, I grew up on 70s films, right? So I grew up on films that didn't have good ending. Probably a movie that a lot of people wouldn't know, Robert Blake, Electric Glide in Blue. Do you remember? Do you ever hear that movie?
I'm not familiar with that one.
So Robert Blake plays this guy who's a cop, and then he becomes a plainclothes cop, and then he gets busted back down to regular motorcycle cop again. And the movie starts with him pulling over this VW bus on the middle of the highway in Vegas, and he lets them go, but something's not right, and he pulls them over again at the end, and they blow him away with a shotgun. And he blows off the back of this motorcycle and ends up in the middle of the highway looking like what happened, and and the credits just roll. That kind of stuff was what blew my mind when I was coming up. I would say the biggest impact of anybody, or as one of my heroes, was Bruce Lee. The first movie I saw was Fist of Fury. There was this little movie theater in my neighborhood where they would let you go into R-rated movies underage. And so I saw movies like, Fist of Fury, but I also saw movies like Exorcist, which really still to this day was by far the scariest thing I'd ever seen. There was no special effects like that when that movie came out. That movie just blew my head open. I had nightmares. I couldn't sleep. But movies like Jaws, stuff, in the 70s, it was just different. It wasn't until like the 80s or sort of Star Wars, which is a big deal. And I remember that, but it's sort of like then things started going like Spielberg and everything started having happy endings. Now I know what that genre is. Ultimately, it's film noir. I like when nobody survives and makes it out.
What was the name of that Robert Blake movie again?
Electric Glide and Blue.
Okay, I'm writing that down so I can watch it later. So obviously you're a musician. When did you first pick up instrument?
I started playing guitar at the same time I started taking acting lessons, which was about 13 years old. And the music influences was wide. My mom was listening to show tunes and pop music. My dad was listening to jazz. My brother was the one introducing me to the rock, the Sabbath and the Doors and all that. I also lived in a Chicano neighborhood where oldies were king. You know what I mean? Like that's what the homies listened to. And I think that era, the songwriting, the craftsmanship is just excellent. And I think that had is much of influence as anything. And one of my favorite all-time songs is Aaron Neville, Tell It Like It Is. Tell it like it is. That thing gets me right in the heart, man. His voice gives me chills.
Obviously, you played guitar. Did you start singing as well back then?
Yeah, it was, my intention was to be a professional actor, and I was clear about that at a very young age. And I was in a professional workshop, and I had a mentor named Virgil Fry. He really got me going in that direction, became my manager. No one really was there for me on that level musically. I just wanted to learn to play guitar. And then once I learned to play, I started writing. That's been the thing for me. The joy of writing a song is as good as it gets for me creatively. It's a buzz. I don't know how else to describe it. It's like when the idea starts coming through you, or a lyric starts coming through you, or a melody starts coming through you have to go get it down before you lose it.
Right.
Like you have this window of time to get this concept, this idea down. I love it. I love writing. That's my joy.
What does your book writing process look like? You start with a riff?
It really varies. Sometimes it's a lyrical idea. Sometimes it's just start writing something that triggers them. Sometimes you're just playing guitar, practicing, and some riff comes, an idea comes. And then I've done a lot of co-writing too. My first, it was actually my second band called The Gathering, was an acoustic band doing the whole coffee house scene at the end of the 80s when metal was still king in Los Angeles. We were doing this whole different vibe. I started writing with this girl named Shana O'Neill. We were in an acting class together. The first song we wrote, she was 13, I was 16. We can just write, like it's like butter. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. She'll come up with a melody, I start writing a song. She comes up, I start writing a song, she starts writing a lyric. It's like it's effortless. And the same thing kind of happened with the band I'm in now, Ripple Street, with Stephen Lee Adams, the bass player. He approached me hearing some other things I had done, and I was like, let's try it. And you can either write with somebody, you can't. I can't put my finger on why. It's just chemistry. And writing with him is very different. Being a bass player, he writes these staccato licks, and you got to kind of get your lyrics in there, kind of dumb them down. Whereas when you write on a guitar, you're Bob Dylan and you try to squeeze as many lyrics as you can in, right? It's right. Like a strummy thing, right? Mm-hmm. So it forced me to write in a different way. And I like that. I like when you can collaborate with somebody and it brings out different things. It's fun.
Well said. On the acting side of things, early on, were you doing a lot of theater when you were taking these classes? Not
a ton. I mean, in high school and all of that, but it was all like musical theater, right? And I didn't really have my voice developed that well, and I just would get so nervous. I mean, I did the musicals, but I didn't get any of the good roles because I was like just terrified to sing. It was scary. And what would happen is I get like a recording role, and then we'd be rehearsing, and the guys would look at me like, dude, you can sing. What, I mean, oh yeah, I guess. But I was doing anything I could do, but really the professional workshop is where I was really getting my chops. And what was unique about the class was, first off, Virgil was a working actor, so you had that perspective. But second off, he had a class with adults and kids, teenagers in the same class, which just isn't done. I guess people don't figure they want to deal with teenagers or what, but for me, it was great. And I always was someone who was, I could get along with my the older people. And I always thought you could learn from them, not only from their successes, but from their mistakes, right. My acting coach made many, he was a 4-time Golden Glove champion. He was a tough dude, freaked a lot of people out on sets. He had a famous moment. He did a movie with Yaphet Kotto. Yaphet Kotto is a scary looking dude. Yaphet Kotto was the director. He yelled at him. My mentor got so mad. He said he'd bet him any amount of money he wanted. He'd take him up on the top of the hill and break every bone in his body. And that got out of town that Yaphet Kotto backed down to him.
He was a made man.
Yeah. So, you learn from the mistakes too. Not that I would have challenged Yaphet Kotto, I can tell you that right now.
just hang on, let me go get my acting teacher real quick.
Yeah, exactly. But he was a bad dude, but he also sometimes let that get the better of him, on sets. And so I learned a lot. But the adults with children to me was a great thing, because who do you have your most conflicts with coming up as a teenager? The authority figures, your parents, exactly. Your teachers, the cops. So we were able to do scenes and improvs where we could have that dynamic, and it was great.
So I guess what made you, it's not common for a kid, and it's not necessarily uncommon, but I wouldn't say it's common for a kid to pursue acting as a career. What made you want to take that route so early on in your life?
Well, my suspicion is it was partially because it was in the blood, right? So my grandfather, who I never knew on my father's side, was a hoofer, a piano player, and did bit parts in movies. I never met him, but one day my grandmother was like, there's your grandfather. He was in a Shirley Temple movie, which I wish I knew what movie it was. I've looked for it and never found it. I was like 10. I could barely remember remember it, but I remember it was like toward the end of the movie, and it was like a Civil War thing or something. And he was in a wheelchair talking to Shirley Temple. I mean, how cool is that, right? So there was that. And then my mom was in the USO and entertaining troops in like World War II and had her own dance studio by the time she was 18, and then gave that all up for her first marriage. So it was kind of like incomplete business, incomplete blood on both sides. And in no way did my mom encourage me or push me in that direction. She didn't want me to be a child actor. She somehow felt she had lost some of her childhood. I couldn't understand it because she chose it all. It was nobody had her, pushed her into it. So I couldn't understand it. So I kept bugging her. And finally she got me in a workshop when I was 13. I hated it because it was like her style, like tap dancing. And, it was like not what I meant. And I was going to quit. And that's when this guy, Virgil Fry, literally found me on the street. His son was on a commercial audition next door. He's like, I like your son's look. Is he an actor? I teach a class. When his son came out, I recognized his son. His son is named Sean Fry. And in the 70s, he worked a lot. He was in the original Fun with Dick and Jane. He did a lot of, I remember him doing Movie of the Week with Elizabeth Montgomery. And I was like, this guy must know what he's doing. His kid's working. And so I joined that class, and that class was method and gritty. And it was everything I'd been looking for.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. Was Children of the Corn your very first professional gig?
You are correct. It's not my first thing I did commercial. I did an AFI film, but it was my first feature film and the first thing anybody really saw. Absolutely. So Linda Francis, the casting director, had seen me in a showcase back in the 80s. Showcases became a thing. They still occur, but it's not quite the same. Somebody's got to pay for them or pay to get the casting directors there. And it's like that kind of taints everything. So they would be these showcases where you'd rent a theater, a bunch of actors would get together and put scenes up and invite casting directors and feed them and give them wine. And if they liked you, they'd take a picture, and Linda Francis came to a showcase, and she became the first person in the industry, that was a gatekeeper that could make a difference, who believed in me. And I auditioned for her for a few things. One was a film I got where I was going to play the quarterback and the bad guy quarterback in a project, and that movie tanked. I don't know what happened, but it went away. And then so she was the one who brought me in for Children of the Corn, and she definitely was the one who championed me to the producer and the director to go with this guy.
So did you have much experience with horror as a kid going into Children of the Corn?
I wasn't a huge horror fan. I certainly, like I said, I'd seen some horror films. Yeah. Certainly, like I said, the one that still to this day, though it's an obvious one for horror fans, but The Exorcist, man, freaked me out. I now know Eileen Dietz, who did all the stuff that the other girl couldn't do because she was underage. All the gnarly stuff, the throwing up and the cross and all that. Eileen, as a matter of fact, she's the one who got me with my manager, Chris Rowe Management, who were both with, originally started just doing conventions with him, and now he's developed a really good acting roster as well. So thank you to Eileen Dietz. So ironically, I know somebody from that movie now who scared the crap out of me. And I'm usually the one who hears that about me.
Yeah. That's funny because me and Angelique were just talking, of course, we're talking about Children of the Corn today. And you mentioned a lot of kids, their problems growing up are with authority figures. And Children of the Corn didn't scare me as a kid because I was like, hey, I'm a kid. They're not going to come slit my throat.
There you go.
This is all the adults' problem.
Yeah, you're right. And I think the reason that movie, like rock and roll, resonates every generation is because, of course, there's that rebellion, that teenage rebellion, and that never goes away. As long as there's people being born, there's always going to be American teenage rebellion, and they're always going to find that movie just like they're going to find Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, Children of the Corn is that kind of hard rock and roll themed horror movie. And
I agree.
It's become one of the classics, obviously, you're aware, and it's your first role, a Stephen King adaptation. So in hindsight, are there things that you notice looking back on the set maybe that kind of hints towards the success that the movie would have?
No, I mean, we knew, Stephen King was, we knew he was, a successful writer. This was only a short story. It was made by, a pretty independent company. All I was trying to do was prove I could act, you know what I mean? Like prove it to myself and prove it to the world because I had been studying a long time and I was serious about it. So for me, it was my moment of truth. I think me and John Franklin both that, hey, we got some chops here and we can do this. Horror was not mainstream like it is now. It just wasn't. It was considered B movies. Critics didn't give it any love. They didn't give me any love. So I didn't know, but what happened was as soon as it came out, it was the reaction to people on the streets was just, crazy. Kids would go running to their parents crying and things and stuff I just was not ready for. I realized the power of cinema. I realized, what you put out there, you can have a great impact on people, good or bad. I took that seriously from that point on. I realized the cinema is a very powerful medium. It really can influence people.
Right. And I think another reason that that movie connects with people like myself, folks my age, is that kids are the stars, even the bad guys are kids. So those things really strike home with you.
That's true. It was teenage cinema, in the 80s was blowing up, and I just happened to be, the right age at the right time, because they needed 18-year-olds who could work full days that look 15. And John was even older than 18, if you can believe that.
Yeah. That's blows my mind. I just learned that recently that he was like 25, 26. I'm just like, what the?
I'm not sure, but I don't know. It was 20 something. I know that.
Yeah. There's a creepy chemistry between you guys. Did you guys work together a lot offset?
No. It was just by the callback. I had to do 2 auditions. He got cast by the callback. So it had come down to me and like two other guys, I guess. And I just remember grabbing him by his lapels and pretty much picking him up off of his feet and shaking the crap out of him. And he said, yeah, dude, you were by far the most terrifying. We're just linked together. It's just, out of probably, you always say you're going to keep in touch with people just because of conventions and everything else. We're linked together through history. We're always going to reunite and find each other. And it's it was because we had the same experience, and that it was our first film. We have that too. Not just that film, not just 2 guys who, we're ranked in like the top 10 scariest kids of all time. He might be ranked number 1, we just have this parallel thing with this project that we just couldn't hide from if we wanted to. I did a movie called Killing Grounds years later that he was in, that I got to kill him. I got to get payback,
I'm going to have to watch that one. I have not seen that one.
Yeah, it was like a straight, video film, but I got to say, it's one of the best bad guys I ever played. And me and Anthony Michael Hall played the bad guys. The plot line is this gold bullion, plane crashes in the middle of the mountains, and these people who are like on a tour find it and they try to get it out, but it's ours and we find them. It's definitely film noir. And it's got some good, interesting people in it. Priscilla Barnes, Charles Rocket, who's no longer among us, some really good people, and it's a really good bad guy. It's just not a film a lot of people know, but I play a pretty crazy dude in that one.
Well, you're really good at that. I'm going to have to give it a watch.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's not the perfect movie, but there's some good performances.
What was it like doing the Burbs?
That was an interesting experience. Number 1, there was a writer's strike on, so there was only us and Fletch 2 on the entire Universal lot. And I was too young to really realize how fortunate I was to have a job, because I had been working steady at that point, and I just didn't really get like, oh, people are out of work, and they have families to feed. I was just too young to appreciate that. But what was the challenge was this character who's supposed to be a stranger from a strange land. Everywhere I look, there's people in my childhood that I look up to. I remember Tom Hanks from Bosom Buddies, and even his guest star on Happy Days, a really great guest star, as a matter of fact. But my God, we have Princess Leia. We have, it's like everywhere you look. And I'm a huge Bruce Dern fan, and there's Bruce Dern. So it was like I had to really shake that off to do my job. I don't know these people. And Joe Dante was great, just a really nice guy and easy to work for. And, it was a really good experience.
You're speaking about like some of the people you've worked with over years. And if we just go back to Children of the Corn, obviously Children of the Corn came out just before Terminator, before Linda Hamilton did Terminator and T2. So what's it like for you seeing that, what she's become, knowing that you guys are in Children of the Corn together?
She was a sweetheart when we did Corn, and she's still a sweetheart to this day. I just can't say how nice she is. It's always great to see her. When we get to see her every once in a while on conventions and things, it's always a nice little family reunion, because she's just lovely. When you put the list together, if you really, for me, it's all of us did one job at a time, but that's led to 100 jobs over 30 years. But if you put the list of some of the people I worked with, some of the people who I worked with before they were huge or whatever, it's pretty crazy. It's a pretty crazy list of some really accomplished actors. And jumping ahead right now, if we just talk about Queen Bees that just came out, I only had a cameo in that, but I got to work with Ellen Bernstein, Anne Margaret, Jane Curtin, and Loretta Devine in a scene. I mean, still I'm working with people that are just like icons, and it's always great when you get to work. The worst is when you get to work with somebody you really admire and they're a jerk. That's the worst, because I never want to see them in a movie again, But that certainly was not the case on Queen Bees. They were all really sweet and all really great at what they do, and had a good time.
I would hope that incidents like that are few and far between.
They are, but they do happen, and people do have egos, and a lot. I find it's mainly insecurity, and it's in every department. If a director of photography is insecure, he can be a pain in the butt. It's like the ones that are usually accomplished are the ones that are not throwing their weight around. It's usually people that are insecure that are throwing their weight around. But it does happen, and it just kills the creative flow. They start trying to take your good lines from you, or it's all about them. It usually comes down to them trying to look good. They don't like the scene has been set up to create tension where they may not look good, and they seem to want to get rid of all of that. Then why am I here? Like why are we in this scene together?
Why did you take this job?
Yeah, you get to. I mean, it's the whole point is to create tension one way or another. Even in comedy, there's tension. So if you're taking that out, you're taking the obstacles away. I mean, I also taught acting for a lot of years, and it was all about teaching people to make the bloodiest choice they can make. You when you decide what you want in the scene, the more life or death that is, the better it is. You know what I mean? The more you're going to be working with, the more urgency you have, the more you're going to be reacting, and you'll be amazed how many times. I was amazed how many times actors I would train would pick wussy ass choices because it's like they didn't want to feel anything. And I'm like, if you don't want to feel anything, you're in the wrong profession, unless you can be Mr. Cool action hero dude, you're in the wrong profession, because the rest of us, you gotta feel something.
You just mentioned that you were an acting teacher. What do you teach your students day one when they walk into your class? What's the first lesson you're driving home?
This is my church, and I'll screw around with it. That's what I teach, number one. I expect you to show up and do your best. I don't care if your best is 10 times worse than somebody else in the class, but I want your best, because that's how we're going to get somewhere, right? So, but I was the guy that trained me again, Virgil Fry. He trained me to be an acting coach as well. We did these weekend intensives all over the country, and I would go as kind of the guinea pig to do these exercises, because these were intense, like psychodrama, drama therapy stuff, bringing up your past, all this stuff. So he would have me as the guinea pig to like set the tone, but it was also me sitting there watching him teach. And working with these actors. And before I knew it, there was 2 women in that class, Gail Abbott and Judy O'Neill, who became our agents for a period of time. And then they broke off and both became managers. And then they both started having me teach up in Oregon and San Francisco and bringing some talent down. And some of these people, broke. Lucio Silverstone was one of our students. Josh Lucas up in Oregon was one of our students. And it was really about, teaching them commitment, being really committed to what you're doing, and then working on this emotional stuff so that actors had range. Because that's a lot of times what that lacks people is they like simple thing, like say like you have to cry in a scene and you're a man, but you were taught at a young age from your father, men don't cry. So you start stuffing that emotion. When you start to feel that in a scene, you're going to stuff it. So we got to do work to open those channels back up so you can actually get to the places you want to get. And the acting has to become bigger than your considerations. Because nobody wants to freaking cry, right? Nobody wants to show pain. Nobody wants to be vulnerable. The acting has to become something that it's worth it to you to go through that. But then it ends up being good for you as a human being too. So you get stuff off your chest.
So you're an acting coach and sort of a psychiatrist at the same time.
Very, very much so. That's why I use the word psychodrama, drama therapy, because it is therapeutic. But so it's good for you, but it's also really good for your work. Like one of the things we would do is we'd have them do a scene in the beginning and then work with them for the whole weekend and really opening themselves up, and then do the scene again at the end. And it would just be night and day, because all of a sudden they're reacting and they're feeling and they're going all these places that they just didn't have access to, 72 hours before.
Hello, kiddies. Welcome to Dads from the Crypt.
Hello, boys and ghouls. Welcome to Dads from the Crypt, a weekly podcast where 3 dads who love horror movies review the Tales from the Crypt TV series and movies. My name is Jason. I'll be joined by fellow dads Jody and Mondo. Join us as we dive into the plot, talent, and source comics of the iconic HBO series. There will also be music recommendations, trivia, and dad advice. Look for the Dads from the Crypt podcast on your favorite podcast app starting on Father's Day. And follow us on our Facebook group, Twitter @CryptDads, and Instagram @Dads from the Crypt.
Follow Dads from the Crypt, or I will follow you to the grave.
That's really cool.
That's fantastic.
You're sprinkled across many iconic films of the 80s outside of The Burbs, Children of the Corn, Can't Buy Me Love. Back to the Future. What was it like on the set of Back to the Future?
Well, the story I always tell is that, I was lucky enough, and I say this because I'm speaking financially here, that I was there before Eric Stoltz got let go. So when they did the reshoot and they were they were scrambling to do all that. I was supposed to maybe work like 3 days or something. They forgot about me, so I got paid for 5 weeks on one of the most successful trilogies of all time. So those are still some of the best residual checks that I get. And I always say many times, Back to the Future residual check saved my butt and paid my bills, so that's the best part of it for me. Crispin Glover and I, the first thing I ever did was an AFI film that I always forget the name of, but you can find it. There's a thing called the Beaver Trilogies. They did this same project 3 times. Sean Penn played it once. Crispin Glover played it once. He still says it's the best thing he's ever done. And I tell this story because it's crazy. So the first thing I ever do is supposed to be me and some guys smoking cigarettes in the boys' room. Director's just like, go, and we're going. And then the bathroom door opens and it's Crispin Glover dressed in the black outfit of Olivia Newton-John from Grease. You can imagine that. And I'm like, what am I seeing? But then I'm also watching this guy. I'm like, this guy is incredible. Who's this guy? And we became friendly. And so it was really great. It's always great when you go on a set and you actually know somebody already. And all of my scenes are with him. And so kicking him in the ass and all those things, I felt comfortable because I knew we could work together.
Crispin Glover is one of the great quote unquote weird actors of our time. He just has his own thing.
If you just, from a point of view of just acting, right? Like what they call subtext, the mind, the things that are going on in your mind, you can see them coming across your eyes. I don't know anybody who does it better than Crispin Glover. I mean, it's just, he's so quirky, but you see all this stuff going on. He doesn't have to do anything. It's just happening. I'm a big fan. And, we got a chance to work together on a miniseries a few years back now called Texas Rising, which I would have never pictured Crispin in a Western, but he was great. It was the perfect role for him in that Western, and it was a mini series, and it was great to get to work with him again and catch up with him again. And
have you seen him in Willard?
I haven't, but I imagine he's got to be terrific because it's a perfect role for him.
But
I haven't seen it.
I love that movie.
That's a great Crispin Glover movie. Give that one a watch.
Yeah, but even when he played Andy Warhol, when I heard he got Andy Warhol, I'm like, come on, man, who better? I would have picked Crispin Glover for Andy Warhol too.
Courtney, you've done a lot of TV as well as film. So does your approach differ as an actor if you're going into TV as opposed to film?
Well, it differs in that TV moves really fast. So you get some sides. You have less than 24 hours to prepare, come in and do your cold reading. And if you're lucky enough to get it, then you maybe have a week at best to then show up on set. And then you're shooting an hour or 44 minutes technically without commercials in 6 days. So it's like big guns, no chance for experimenting or playing around, just get her done, Whereas on a film, you might get it and then have a month to prepare. You can have more rehearsal time when you get on set, a little more experimentation. Television doesn't have room for that. They bring in like walk here. And if you basically say your lines without stumbling, they're moving on. So you learn that you have to be good on your first 2 takes. Because I'm not the lead in the show. They'll give those guys 6 takes lead, but I'm just a guest star. They're not giving me a lot of shots at it, so I better come bringing thunder right away.
What would you say are some of your personal favorite TV spots you've done over the years? You got a lot.
Yeah. I've had some of the best roles I've ever done have been guest stars on TV. 2 or 3 that come to mind are A Diagnosis Murder. I played a character who was paralyzed on one side and pretending to have cerebral palsy on the other. And I had a week to prepare that. That was pretty intense. And that was before the internet where you could go on and look at stuff. So it was like, to pull that off was pretty amazing to me. And I got to yell at Dick Van Dyke, so you can't beat that. I would say the My Name is Earl I did, called I Sold a Guy a Lemon Car, was a great role. One of the best roles I've done because I got to basically do everything I do. The character starts out nerdy and ends up bitter and edgy and dark. So all kind of my whole range was in one little guest star. And I loved that show. And I auditioned for that show for 4 years and I ended up getting the best audition, the best role so that I auditioned for on there. So it turned out to be a really good thing. Plus my son loved that show and I was able to bring him on set and meet the guys. He was in high school at the time and that was great. And then I'd say the last really super challenging role I did on TV was a Criminal Minds that came out a few years ago where I play, you think I'm the unsub, but I'm not. I'm protecting somebody. But this character was like complicated. He was like homeless, but he had PTSD. He was having flashbacks. He was doing, his mind was in a lot of places and it was very difficult. But it was a great challenge, and I was really, really proud of the work.
I don't know how much you can tell us about this because we had John Cassier on recently, and I asked him the same thing. But full circle, you worked on Tales from the Crypt in the early 90s, and now you've got a movie come in post-production called Hellblazers, and the cast on that is ridiculous. So what can you tell us about that movie? You got Billy Zane, Adrienne Barbeau, Tony Todd, yourself, John Cassier. It's a bunch of horror legends in there.
Yeah, it's all horror, great horror people in it. I've worked for the director Justin Lee a few times now, and he'd been trying to get me and Bruce Dern back together, for a Burbs reunion, which was great for me because Bruce was really good to me on that set and really took me under his wing and really gave me a lot of confidence as an actor, and I appreciated it, but I never really got a chance to thank him. So it was great to get on that set and tell him how much, him appreciate, him recognizing my work meant to me. And so that was really the highlight of the whole thing for me. I was only on it for a few days. I don't know. I mean, I could just try to describe the film, but I don't even know how to describe the film. It's a horror film. I can tell you that much. And there's sort of this cult involved in trying to take over this small town. I can tell you that much. And now that I'm older, I'm in the small town now. I'm not in the cult anymore.
I was like, I see why you're involved now.
yeah. But there's some really, really good people in it. So I do have high hopes for it. I haven't heard boo about it. Justin tends to do that. I'll hear from him. I'll work. And then I like the guy goes in the editing room and disappears for a year. So I have no idea what's going on with it.
Okay, cool. I have high hopes for it with all those names attached.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, like I said, I have high hopes for it. You've got a lot of good people. I mean, you can't go wrong with good actors, right? That'll always help.
I'm looking at your bio here, Courtney. It says that you worked as a musician and once performed live on stage with Fish. So how did that happen?
Yep, that's a story. Here we go. So it starts with me hitchhiking across the country right before Can't Buy Me Live came out because a friend of mine got married in Canada and I was hitchhiking to Detroit to see a girl. Oh. And on the second day, this guy named Mike Gordon, the bass player from Fish, picked me up, took me to Burlington, Vermont, found me a place to stay that night, and was talking about this band. I got this band. We're playing in this little club called Nectars, and but I'm like, okay, cool, man. Good luck with that. But he kept in touch with me. Next thing you know, he's in LA. They're opening for Santana at the Greek. The next thing you know, they're headlining the Greek, and the next thing you know, they just blow up and become Fish. So that's the relationship side of it. So they had this guy that was a prankster that was always pranking them that they wanted to get back, and he was deathly afraid of Malachi. So they kept coming up with these ideas, but none of them were like any good or convenient. So I kept passing, and they finally came up with a really good one. And it was they were doing a gig in Vegas, and so they threw this party in their penthouse, and then they got this guy high on mushrooms. Then took him out gambling. When he came back, it was a dark room with Children of the Corn playing, and the four guys in the band were watching it with him. And then one by one they peeled off. Trey being the last, because Trey is a redhead. I was waiting in the master bedroom. I put on his jacket and I come and sit down next to the guy.
Oh, that's great.
They were hoping for him to scream, which he didn't, but he looked terrified, right? Thought he was probably just having a bad trip. But he's like, oh, hey. And he gets up, he slowly walks out of the room, and they're like, was he scared? I said, dude, he was petrified. And then when we went to talk to him, he literally could not utter a syllable for 45 minutes. And that's when they realized they had done the ultimate prank. And when he finally was coherent enough to tell them, he said he had never been more scared in his life. So huge success. So now I'm in with the band. Anyway, I'm in their good graces at this point. And then they were like, what do you want? I said, well, let me come out and play a song with you guys. And so Larry and Les from Primus came out too. So I didn't play guitar. I just came out and played some percussion, but I got to play a gig in Vegas with the boys in front of 8,000 people. So not something I'll soon forget.
That's one of the best stories I've ever heard.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
When the bassist for Fish picked you up, did he know who you were when you were hitchhiking?
I don't think he did. He said the reason he picked me up was it was kind of getting towards sunset, and I didn't know even where I was. I was not in a good place if I didn't get a ride at that point. But I got an ice cream cone, and this girl was standing next to me. This little girl had gotten a cone, and he said the reason he pulled over with the hitchhiking is he thought the little girl needed a ride. That's why I got the ride. So he wasn't going to stop for me. So it just was a meant to be thing, and we're still we still talk to this day, which is kind of crazy.
Was there a moment where he just kind of glanced at you like, you're fucking Malachi?
I don't remember. It may have happened at some point, but I just remember how cool he was. He literally found me a place to stay that night, and it was just like he couldn't have been nicer. He really is a nice guy and a very creative individual, and he's also a filmmaker. He's the only one out of the group that does anything with movies. He was the one who egged him on to do I think the Hoist record, which they did in LA. Finally talked him into doing a video because they didn't want to do it. He got the label to let him direct, and I was able to give him one really good piece of advice, which was because the suits were going to be hovering over him. They didn't know, can this guy direct me? They said, look, you're going to have to make 1,000 decisions as a director a day, literally 1,000 decisions. I said, just make them. They're not all going to be right. But if they see you going, red suit, blue suit, red, camera where? Over there. they'll back off, And he said, man, that was the best advice anybody could have ever given me. Because within an hour, the suits were like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. And he got to direct his music video.
You just fake them out with your conviction.
Well, it's true, though. As a director, you have to make, if you have to make 1,000 decisions a day, are you going to make them all right? Nah.
No.
But you're the guy, you're the girl, whoever is at the helm, everyone's looking to you. And if you don't make the decisions, then you start to create a void in the production, and other people start trying to make those decisions that's not their job. And it's a horrible thing. When that starts happening on set, that's when a set starts unraveling.
So in terms of things like that happening, what would you say was your most challenging job in terms of just things popping up, I guess?
Oh, I don't know, but it happens a lot. The thing is you can see what's going down on set, pretty quick, like what kind of set it's going to be. It doesn't take long. What I do if it's not going well is I just walk off until they figure it out, because I'm just going to eventually get pissed off, and I don't want to be chiming in like that. So I just, I step off, and I'm like, call me when y'all get it together.
That's a good approach.
Yeah.
Tell us about Ripple Street, Courtney. What was the catalyst for that, and what do you guys have going on?
So Ripple Street's my band. I have a solo project out right now too called Courtney Gains Volume 1. It's all acoustic stuff. And the third song, Let It Ride, just came out, and it just got picked up in a little indie movie I did called My Redneck Neighbor. And I always say, guess who was the redneck neighbor? But that's cool. That's going to be in a movie. I love that. I love when a song gets picked up. So that's, so the band, Stephen Lee Adams, the bass player, found me. He heard a solo record. I did a song called Journeyman that Matt Sorum produced from Guns and got Slash to play lead on, if you can believe all that. And that was just because I was dating a girl that was best friends with the girl he was dating. And I went up to his house one day, and she was like, hey, my boyfriend can sing. And he put me on the spot. He said, here's a guitar, do something. I was like, oh man, play it for Matt Sorum. I'm like, I don't know. But he liked my voice, and he's like, you want to do something? Let's do it. And I was just like, I ain't going to say no to that. That was an amazing experience. Getting to see Slash play lead was like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, it looks like nothing's going on, but everything's going on, right?
A master.
Like a master, exactly. And so Steven had heard that song, approached me, and like I said, we started writing, and we started doing gigs around LA. But I was all about like, look, man, I've done gigs. Gigs are all right, but really, I'm interested in writing a record. And I just gone through a breakup, so our first record is just a straight up breakup, angry record. It was therapy every step of the way. It was therapy. And, but I've always used music as a form of therapy. Same thing with acting classes too, though. There are places that you can get what's on your chest off in a way that's creative. And, I wish everyone had those outlets, because I think it would stop people from going postal, to be honest.
Yeah.
But so the band, so we put out our first record, and then recently we brought in a new guy, Frankie Bogus, on some guitars, and we've been doing some co-writing. He also does engineering and mixing, so it's like he's been a great resource. And so we put out 3 singles this year, and the last one's called Would You. And every time you put an EPK out on stuff, you got to kind of like say, what does this sound like to sell it, so to speak. And I feel comfortable saying it's got shades of Black Sabbath in it. I feel very comfortable with that critique, and it's a bit of a dark tune, and I like it. It's fun. I like you having an acoustic thing mellow on one side, and then a heavy rock song on the other, just like the acting, have some range, right? So if it sounds good on acoustic or it sounds good on a piano, you've written a good song.
Right.
And then from there you can build. So I've written most of my material I've written on acoustic guitar, and I hang my, that's where I hang my hat as I'm an okay singer. I'm an okay guitar player, but I think I can write a pretty good song. That's where I hang my hat.
I've listened to Slab City, and I really enjoyed it. It has a bit of a grungy vibe to me when I listen to it.
Very much so. That was the first single we put out this year. Our first record, one of my friends I'll talk about this project for a second after this, but he calls it cruise grunge. So it's like, kind of driving in your car grunge. So I think 90s grunge is kind of where we fit, and Slab City definitely has that feel. And there's a video on that if you want to see it too. I have a nice big COVID beard for that sucker. So
that's the one I saw.
Yeah, yep. Check it out. So, but the guy that gave us that, just I know I can tell you're a rocker and a metal guy. I have my hunch. Yeah. I got this other project to talk about that's really cool. This guy named Mike Gallagher wrote this metal rock opera based on H.P. Lovecraft's Dreams of the Witch House.
Oh shit!
And I play one of the characters actors in it. And the last thing they put out, I actually brought John Franklin in too, and he sings, and he comes from musical theater in Chicago. He slayed it. You could find it. The musicians that this guy has on this stuff is just insane. Like he's got Bruce Kulick, played with Kiss. He plays with Grand Funk now. Yeah, some people consider him the best metal guitar player out there in Europe and stuff. He's considered like a god. And that guy can shred, dude. I mean, like mind-bending shredding. Doug Blair from Wasp. I mean, like some like really great players on this stuff. And it's an incredible record. So he put out a double record, and now he's been putting out singles using horror and metal people to like create some hype. And he's trying to get a film done at this point. Yeah, it's unique. I don't know anything out there like it. So if you want to hear some metal rock opera-ish type thing, I highly recommend it.
Say the project's name one more time.
Dreams of the Witch House, or Dreams in the Witch House, I guess is and like I said, it's based off the H.P. Lovecraft story.
Awesome. That is definitely up my alley. Going to check that out. To date, what would you say is the best acting advice that you've received?
The best acting advice I ever received was from Mark Griffith, the director of Hard Bodies, but I also did another movie with him in the Philippines, and we were supposed to do more. It's a long story how I was supposed to do Hard Bodies too. It's a long story, but I actually worked with the guy 5 times, but we worked twice. But when I started getting a little too big for my britches, and I was like, why do I have to audition anymore, man? I'm in a bunch of stuff. He told me a story. I'm not going to tell you who the actress was, but he told me a story how this actress who was very famous but hadn't worked in a while, walked into this audition, and the director didn't know who she was, and she had this big purse. And he said, okay, are you ready to do the scene? And she pulls out an Oscar and slams it on the desk. And he's like, oh, I see. You've won an Oscar. That's pretty impressive. Okay, you ready to do your scene? She reaches into her purse and brings out another Oscar and slams it on the desk. She refused to read. And he told me the moral of the story is she didn't get the job.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, that got my head clear, and I was like, you gotta suit up and show up, and you gotta be willing to show them you can do it, and if you're not going to be a yes, I don't care if you have 2 Oscars, you may not get the job. So that's the best advice.
Yeah, that's a cautionary tale there for anybody with Oscars out there. Now, when you go to cons or when you go outside to the grocery store, are you bombarded with people screaming Outlander at you?
It's happened a lot over the years, or in cars running, walking down the street, but certainly at conventions, it depends on the person. It could definitely be Outlander, or if it's a Burbs person, it came with the frame, or Sardine, the whole convention. And every time I walk past, I get Sardine. I'm like, shut up, man. Like 3 times is enough. I'm not working now. I'm just in the hotel. Can we take a break?
Right.
But yeah, but people are just excited. You know what I mean? It's nice to know that I have quotes out there that people actually want me to sign on pictures. I don't take the convention thing for granted, man. It's like the ones that are there that aren't happy, I'm like, then don't be here, man. Because here's the job description. If this was a job description in a freaking newspaper, it'd say, you're going to sit at a table. People will come from miles around, happy to meet you, and then pay you money to sign your name on something. I mean, Is there an easier or better job that you've ever heard as a job description? I haven't.
No, sir. Can't say that I have.
People are so excited to meet people, and if they're a curmudgeon, it just bums them out. They come to my table and like, oh yeah, I was just at so-and-so's table. He was, he didn't even seem like he wanted to be there. When I paid $40 to have him sign, and he spelled my name wrong. It's like, it's like, yeah, that sucks. I feel for you. I would be bummed out too.
I mean, to give you guys a break, coming from a fan perspective of it, some fans don't have the etiquette. If the guy's on the elevator and he's just signed autographs for 8 hours, let him go to his room. Let him take a nap,
That's true too. That's true too. When we're out of our table, let us shut it off and let us, we're hungry and we just want to get to our room. But but some don't. Some, they can't help it. They're just too excited.
Yeah. So have you seen any good films during this whole lockdown?
Ooh, not really. My girlfriend and I watch a lot of like old films. We watch a lot of Turner Movie Classics.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so nothing new I can really cite. As far as horror, I mean, nothing new, but like Get Out was amazing. That was like greatest horror film I've seen in a long time, in my opinion.
I still haven't seen it.
Oh, dude. Yeah, I don't want to tell you anything, but you should watch it. And then the other one, which I had a movie called Candy Corn that I helped produce, came out through Epic. What the heck is that name of that movie where the Art the Clown? What am I talking about?
Terrifier.
That was really good. I was shocked at how good it was. I thought and the director was an auteur filmmaker. He did the special effects. Those some of the special effects are fantastic, but the fact that he did them didn't have another person. Like the guy pulled off, a 1 in a million, low budget, really. And Art the Clown is the best character I've seen come down the pike in a long time.
That is
I think he's really
movie.
creepy and really interesting. And I know they're already doing a second one. They raised their money in like 4 hours or something because everybody wanted to see another one, and I don't blame them. So those are the two horror movies that have jumped out at me in the last few years.
Both good ones. I just wanted to ask your opinion, if you have one, about where the Children of the Corn franchise has gone since the first one.
Well, for the most part, I think it hasn't gone well. I don't watch them all, but only John Franklin wrote and put himself in 666. At least it was like an original character, and
right.
He's great at that role, so couldn't go wrong there. But right now, there's some high hopes. There's a couple things going on. Actually, there's 3 things going on. Number one, the original 1984 soundtrack is just came out on vinyl.
Yeah.
Through a company called 1984.
I was just looking at this morning, but to buy it. Yeah, I was just looking at it.
So that's happening, and the 4K box set or something is supposed to be happening soon. So there's all this research, and then even Elijah Woods has been talking about wanting to reboot the franchise because he does a lot of horror now, so that's interesting. But there's a prequel that's coming out soon that's actually just called Children of the Corn. But I have hopes for it because the producers and the director and stuff are notable. So makes me think they had a budget, makes me think they're going to do something good. So that one is the first one in a while that I'm like, maybe this will really, really reboot the franchise. But incredible, there's been like 8 or 9 now, right, including a sci-fi one. And
yeah.
But now we're to the prequel. It just keeps going.
You can't mention Children of the Corn without mentioning that soundtrack. It's next level.
It's good stuff. I agree. Matter of fact, when we were scaring that guy, there were girls up in the balcony going, setting a tone,
Angelique, what do you have for Mr. Gaines before we cut him loose here for the afternoon?
I really just have my favorite question. So I like to ask this of all of our guests. What is your go-to movie snack? What's that one thing you just have to munch on to make your movie watching experience perfect?
Oh, a movie snack. For me, I guess I would have to say red vines. No, that's not just because I watch a movie, but because on sets, for some reason, they always have red vines, and I don't know why. No one's ever been able to explain why. And Crafty, if you don't have a big box of the giant plastic thing of red vines, you're not on a movie set. And I eat them because it sort of like reminds me I'm working. That sounds strange, but it's true. To me, a breakfast burrito in the morning and red vines are the 2 things I know I'm on a movie working.
Now, do you make the straw out of them and sip your Coke, or do you just eat them whole?
I eat them, but I just snack them all day. It's like the sugar fix to keep me going. There's something about when you're on a movie set and your creative juices are flowing where you feel like you're burning calories at like twice the speed. I can't explain. I don't know if anybody else has that experience, but that's my experience. I have to keep snacking because it's just like, I feel like I'm burning burning the candle on both ends.
Courtney, before we cut you loose here for the afternoon, what else do you have on the horizon coming up?
Oh yeah, good, thank you, because I do have a bunch of stuff. So it's like everything stopped because of COVID. Now they're all coming out. So
right.
Queen Bees just came out a few weeks ago, and then like I said, I got to work with Ellen Bernstein, Anne Margaret, Jane Curtin, and Loretta Devine in a scene. That was an amazing, fantastic experience. A horror movie I did called Await the Dawn just came out on Amazon Prime. And that's got Vernon Wells does a little thing in it. I do a little thing in it. Dee Wallace is in it. So it's got some good people. Yesterday, I don't know when this is coming out, but July 13th, an independent movie I did during COVID called River, which is a psychological sci-fi thriller, came out. And it's pretty remarkable that an independent film came out in less than a year. So it tells you it's got a little something going for it. It's only a 5-hander. It's like a really small cast. And I play a character named Dr. Glenn, who is the town psychiatrist, owns an antique store, and also good friends with the lead girl who loses her mother. And so he's sort of like Sarah. He plays, since it's a small piece, he plays many roles in a way in this in this film, but it's a different role than you've seen me in. Very earthy, very heartfelt character. And I had a nice long COVID beard for it, so it was interesting. And then a movie I did even before Queen Bees called Charming the Hearts of Men just got picked up. Actually, Gravitas Venture picked up 3 of these 4 films, and so I thank them because they've been kind of the champion of the middle budget film, you know?
Right.
And Charming the Hearts of Men is set in the 50s, and it's about this woman who grew up a debutante, father passes away, inherits a big house, but finds out she has no money. So she takes a job at my character's restaurant, Mr. Spratt's Diner, and the civil rights is kind of kicking up in the 50s, and she ends up allowing a sit-in to happen that causes this big ruckus that she ends up, this is based on loosely on a true story, she ends up getting the word women's rights put in the civil rights bill. And it happened in this town, in this little town. Because she's a debutante, she knew the governor and could have some sway. And I'm glad it's finally seen the light of day. It's Kelsey Grammer, Sean Astin. It's got some good people in it. And I think I love doing period pieces. I got a nice little flat top for that one and looking forward to it. So that's coming out August 13th. So all of a sudden, just like boom, 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 boom. All these things are coming out.
Now, did you do much filming during COVID?
I managed to do a little bit. They were very indie films. We did have protocols, but that was the only way it kind of got around the whole thing during the initial half of the lockdown where and still the protocols for big projects they're difficult. The protocols they're testing you constantly. I did the last thing I just did was I did a BET television show, an anthology called Tales. It's 10 episodes a season and they're all different episodes. And I play a real corrupt cop. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. But their protocols were really strict. Sometimes it throws your game off a little bit. Like you have to wear the plastic visor things when you're not working and it got me all claustrophobic. I didn't like it at all. I hate it. I'll wear the mask, but I didn't want to wear one of those.
Now, do you see some of these protocols sticking around even after things have calmed down quite a bit?
Well, I don't know when they're going to decide it calmed down. They're still doing the protocols right now, but they also want you to have been vaxxed now. So like if you're not vaxxed, that can really work against you getting a job. But even then, they're still testing you. That'll keep you from not having to go to a 14-day, like if you go to a location, you won't have to like lock yourself away for 10 days, but they're testing you like every other day while shooting. So, and that for productions can be very, very expensive,
Right. Well, Courtney, we're not going to keep you all afternoon here. It's very cool that you got so much stuff coming up. We're looking forward to watching it. And thank you for chilling out with us for an hour.
Great. I think I have another one. I hope I didn't kill my whole time here. I'm late to the next one, but thank you guys. It was great talking to you, and we'll see you again.
All right, we'll be in touch, my friend. You have a good day.
All right.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, the deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day. All with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts. Listen to podcasts.